I came across this questionable article, and I'd like to come up with make a rebuttal. Sorry, I tried to make that intro so many times, I just kept fucking it. Alright, I'm just gonna go and order the article. If you're gonna talk about problematic relationships in the show, how are you gonna overlook just, like, all of the cheating? There was, like, a lot of cheating that happened. Dee deserved better. So this article does kind of, sort of touch on the stuff that Caprica has done, but it seems to be more so focused on Gaius's many personality flaws. Let's not forget that in addition to that, she also killed a baby in the first episode, and while it could be arguable that she did that out of mercy because she knew that the entire planet was about to be nuked, she still left that poor mother absolutely traumatized for the few hours she had left alive on Earth. So, still not great. Still not great, but Gaius never learned her first name, so, I mean, who's to say? And yeah, he's self-absorbed, but she also didn't exactly have a name at the time. She more so had a number of, like, her Cylon model, and wasn't actually really named, she didn't really name herself Caprica until after she died and came back on the resurrection. But, you know, despite Caprica's many flaws, and all of the people she killed and all of the stuff that she led to, and the fact that most versions of her do not like Boltar at all. And even she doesn't like him until she realizes at the very end that they both, like, see each other in their heads as, like, a projection that's never, like, fully, totally explained and kind of left a little bit up to interpretation. But for the most part, the only version of her that actually likes him is the version in his head. Until, like, the very end. But, you know, him unintentionally committing treason, which he didn't really actually know he was doing, he was just kind of dumb, blinded by sex, for a woman who didn't want to tell him his name because she didn't have one yet, is pretty on brand. Yep, that definitely makes him the worst out of the pair. Are you just gonna gloss over everything else that he's done? Because as far as this article goes, it kind of, it's not like there isn't more stuff that Gaius has done. But if you're just going based off of this, but there's a lot of other stuff that he's done too. So I'm not letting him off the hook easy here. This article kind of makes it sound like all he did was, like, accidentally gave her access and didn't learn her name. There was more. Just a little bit. Alright, I don't know if I'll have time to get through this entire one, but let's at least get to the booze. This article criticizes at least twice that the fleet seems to have an irrationally endless supply of booze. Tried to see if I could find the scene on YouTube. Unfortunately, I could not find it. If I can find it again, like rewatching the series, I will totally make another TikTok. There was one scene where the Nuggets were trying to make alcohol in one of the toilets, and I think it was Saul that walked in on them. I could be wrong on exactly what, I think it was Saul. And was basically made a comment like, you guys are gonna kill yourself, let me show you how to make it properly. Basically implying that they make their own toilet wine. So they actually did address the alcohol, they make it themselves. And there was way more to this article, and I have more to say about even just this part. I'm sorry, this is gonna end up being probably a few parts. First, I still couldn't find the scene, but
you people are the sorriest of the sorry. The dumbest of the dumb. The only thing you're making out of this is a one-way trip to sickbay or the morgue. Now, tonight, after night call, one of you brings me twice that length of copper tubing, the spot heater and CO2 scrubber. I'll show you people how this is done. All right? Now get the hell out of here before I change my mind. Thank you. Children.
But I did find that I was wrong. It wasn't Saul, it was the Chief Tyrrell who found the Nuggets making the alcohol in the toilet and was like, you guys are gonna kill yourself, let me show you how to do it properly. But yeah, regardless, they do establish that they are making their own alcohol, in addition to whatever reserves they still have. On top of that, I'm pretty sure they also mentioned at one point that they were, like, recycling all of their water. And until it got blown up, which then they had a shortage and they had to go find more water, they had a pretty big reserve, like you kind of saw when it got blown up, that there was quite a significant amount of water that they had reserved, so then if they're also recycling all of that, that does explain why they didn't really have a water shortage until that moment. And then we know that there was, like, at least 2 different ships, I think, that they established were growing stuff on them. There was the one that got blown up. And I swear there was also, like, another botanical ship that they mentioned. So there was at least 2 for sure that were growing food, that could have been growing food. And it even mentions these ships later on in that same part. So yeah, there could have definitely been more ships that were dedicated just to growing food. And later on, we do have an episode where they go specifically onto the fuel ship, and you get to see a little bit more about the fuel ship itself. And Chief Tyrrell actually makes a point about the fact when people are born onto the ships, they're kind of basically end up being born into a certain job, and based off of what jobs their parents are doing, that's probably the job that they're going to end up doing, and they were actually trying to address that and do something so that people had a little bit more choice and weren't just forced into a job and like born into it basically, and kind of acknowledged that these were sort of the conditions across all of the ships. So we did kind of go into detail on the fuel ship specific, but also I don't think the series had enough time and got enough seasons to be able to fully go into detail on every single different ship in the entire fleet and all of the different aspects that made day-to-day life possible, like the food ship, fuel ship, waste ship, etc., etc., etc. But if the series was longer, it definitely would have been interesting to go into more of the different ships throughout the fleet and what each different ship's function was and how they all worked together to make all of this possible in the first place. But I'd say they packed a lot into the, 4 seasons that they got? So, why are they criticizing the shape of the paper and stuff? I loved that little detail. I thought it was kind of cute that, the corners were cut off of everything, and it wasn't just the paper. I loved whenever there was, a new thing that popped on the screen. I'm like, oh my god, the picture frames also have the corners cut off. The books have the corners cut off. There was one person who the corners of their glasses, of their square glasses, had the corners cut off. It was great! I loved that! They even answered their own complaint at the end of this little part. Co-author of the Science of the Battlestar Galactica may have resolved the mystery once. He told Wired, I think it was just a joke about having us cut corners on this show, and if true, it adds a meta meaning to Adama's conversation with Chief about the Galactica's original engineers cutting corners during her creation. Why is that, what's wrong with that?
I constructed furniture the time it took you to make that TikTok. Yours.
Okay, now I will say that I did think it was absolutely ridiculous and anytime I saw the doctor, just smoking in front of patients, I was just like, oh my god. So that was kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I don't think they ever actually specified what they were smoking in those cigarettes. Other people have theorized that it could be algae or something too. They also make food out of algae at one point. Not that necessarily any smoke is great, but we don't even actually know what they're necessarily smoking in these cigarettes, which they even point out. I'm gonna have to make a part 3. Now, this might have been one of the ones that bugged me the most out of all of them because it missed the entire point of the whole series. To note, as it points out, the cycle of humanity's birth and destruction has continued over and over again. They say that everything has happened before and will happen again. So the 13th tribe went off on their own, continued the cycle of creating and enslaving their own centurions, leading to their own destruction. Now, it doesn't say that humanity takes millions of years to evolve to the same point. It specifically says 150,000 years later. And then criticizes that the pre-apocalypse timeline seems awfully condensed because beforehand, the 13th tribe basically managed to destroy themselves within a couple thousand years. But then at the very end, when they find the new Earth, then they manage to thrive for 150,000 years and have to kind of re-evolve to get to the same point. But that's explained. They left all their technology behind, which is one of the things that this article also criticizes in a later point, the fact that they get rid of all their technology. That was, the point. When they tried to start over on a new planet and kept all of their technology, they only lasted a couple thousand years before they nuked themselves again. The whole point was to get rid of all their technology so that they would have a little bit more time before the cycle repeats again, which is why they were able to last 150,000 years the next time around without repeating the cycle again within a couple thousand years, because if they would have taken all their technology with them, then the cycle probably would have repeated in another couple thousand years, and it would have only taken 2,000, 3,000 years before they nuked themselves into oblivion again and had to start this whole thing over and find a whole new planet. I'm going to skip a couple points ahead because this one, for a bit further down in the article, kind of ties into. And the decision did make sense because the whole point was to not bring all their technology with them, because if they would have just repeated the whole cycle sooner, and they specifically made a point about not repeating the cycle as quickly. So to do that, they gave up all of their technology and literally started over from scratch. Because when they brought all of their systems with them from the 12 colonies into the ship, there was all kinds of problems that came about because of that. Like as I mentioned in one of the earlier episodes, the fact that people are basically born into their jobs based on what ship they're on, and the same was a continued issue from the planets, because based on what planet they were born on determined their career path in life, basically. And they kind of get into the fact that there was kind of a lot of racism and stuff based on what planet you were from in the original 12 colonies. Planetism? Racism? Planetism? Anyway, carried over their systems of government from those 12 colonies from when they were on the planets, all that same political stuff, and that led them into a lot of problems politically throughout the ship. Because now they're in space, they're not even bound by these planets anymore, and they're still going by that same old system. It kind of showed in a lot of ways, too, that just reducing the population on Earth didn't fix the problems. We still had all the same problems, just with 50,000 people instead. And through that, they learned that they had to just start over from scratch, not carry these systems over, not start bringing their technology over, just start over completely. Otherwise, the cycle would just keep repeating. That was the whole point, and this article completely missed it. This part's criticizing the Cylons joining the thing, but would they really be taken into the fold so easily? It was not easily. A lot of ships rebelled. There was a whole mutiny. A lot of people died. It was not easily. Many people were against. Rant time again, part 4?